Today I welcome to Playing with the Dev, Patrik Jalestam, the composer of the Valheim soundtrack. He joins me on the Ravenheim server, along with fellow Ravens, Versaugh, and Lawla Leyshon.
What metal music do you like?
Oh, I'm mostly into I'm trying to think. No, I'm just what it's like. Somebody asks you what your favorite
Yep.
band is, and you're like, I don't know.
Yeah.
But I'm at the moment. There's a German band I really like at the moment. They've got a really weird name. They're called We Butter the Bread with Butter. This video is sponsored by HostyZ. HostyZ provides dedicated server hosting with the right amount of high-quality hardware and bandwidth that you need for a smooth experience. See the link and discount code below to get your server set up and start playing with your friends right away. But they're really, really cool. They kind of incorporate like really proper like heavy metal. There's a little bit of black metal in there, but they've got like an electro sort of like dance vibe to them as well. They're really, really weird, but their songs work so well.
Cool. Germans do a very interesting mix of metal.
Yeah, they do.
I'm always on the lookout for new metal to listen to. It is fun. It's gonna be really fun to at the concert getting to play like a heavy string guitar and playing the boss music live, because that's where so much metal is just, it is great live music.
That's true.
And some of the best concerts I've been to have been with the heavy metal band.
Yeah,
Have any of you listened to the band Meshuggah?
I have not.
No.
Yeah,
It's,
I know Meshuggah. They're quite their time signatures I just can't follow at all.
They're they're a Swedish, just to give a quick introduction, they're a Swedish band from the north of Sweden, and they play what you would call isometric time signature music. Isometric meaning that you have one length of a loop, and then you have something else like the drums in another length of loop, and then they don't add up, and then at their mathematical point where they do end up, then that's when you restart the whole loop. So if you would have a guitar loop that would be in a section of 5 quarter notes, and the drums would play in 4 quarter note loops. So those loops won't end up together until on every 20th beat, if you times 5 by 4. And a lot of Meshuggah music is like that. That you have these really interesting isometric loops that you just have to wait for them to loop. And I went and saw finally Meshuggah in concert 3 years ago, and it was fantastic. Not just because of the band, but I think the audience are the ones that really made it, because you can headbang most of to this music in 3 different ways, and you just had sections of the audience headbanging in different time signatures to each other. So some people can go, because the drums always have a symbol that goes almost on every quarter note. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So you had people who would headbang in either every quarter note or every second quarter note, like half time feel. And then you would have the other people who would headbang in the odd time signatures that the guitars play in. So you have these people going against each other like the band, which is just great. And then some people just standing around and listening. But it's also how well the audience knew the music, because there was one point in one song they do a break, which is a 5/8 break. So really 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and the audience just counted it. So you go bam, ba-dam, ba-da-ba-dam, audience 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, bam, ba-dam, ba-da-ba-da, and there was such chemistry between the audience and the band.
That's
That
cool.
was just it was another world.
The way you describe it, I'm envisioning it like the music is coming out from the band on the stage and like swirling around in the audience, and they're like physically interacting back and forth together.
Exactly, and the audience just knows the music so well as well. It's not just they know the chorus; it's they know how to count every song and the odd time signatures. It was cool. It was cool. It was symbiotic relationship in the music.
Yeah, that's cool.
Versaugh, what's your favorite tune?
The Plains is actually my favorite.
Woohoo! Redemption for that song.
So it was when I was doing like a build there for a tutorial. I came across. It kind of gave me this. There's this tone with the guitar that kind of gave me like fantasy vibes from the guitar side there, and it kind of gave me some little kind of some building ideas as well. The whole thing, and it's a nice vibe to the thing for me personally, because there are some little sounds in it. I can't really pinpoint which instrument is it, but because of how the planes is with the dry look of it, with some of the grass, so and hearing some little sounds in it kind of bring me to like more. Can't find the word, but it's like it goes with it, the whole atmosphere, and then you kind of have that little mystery, the fantasy of mystery. So there's a whole lot of things I was feeling from that music.
That is really cool. It's a track that I know that it's the sort of most Tristram-esque, if you played the Diablo series of games, style of music and a style of song, because using guitar and mandolin in that with delays and slight effects on it. But I think it's also because the plains is a place where you initially encounter, if you happen to walk in there, you usually die from the death mosquitoes. But then exactly, you had that.
Or
feeling.
even sailing nearby.
Yes, can be hurtful enough. But then later on, you're farming a lot and you're spending a lot of time there. So we wanted something that would keep interest up, even when you're spending a lot of time there later. And for some reason, there's a Swedish novel called the Emigrants, people who travel from a country, and then you have the next part of the series, the Immigrants, about Swedish people leaving the harsh working conditions of farming society in the 19th century and moving to America, and also how hard that is. And I feel like there is something in that about the hardship of farmers, of working the land and tilling it, and you have no choice, because that's your lot in life. That's the choice you have. So it's hard, but at the same time mysteriously rewarding, which is, I think, how I think about farming in a way. How fantastic it is when you grow something and you get berries, you can eat them, and it's a combination of your hard work and how amazing nature is.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And that I mean, that really resonates with me too. And I'm thinking, like, in the plains, it's such a beautiful place with such lovely music, and you want to stay there, and then you are in constant nervousness too, because you could die at any second. It's like such a contrast between the two, of like the beauty and the challenge in that area.
I mean, it kind of gives us this feeling as you get into this relaxed feeling, and the way how the music is, it makes you not think about the imminent danger that may come around the corner, a dead mosquito and whatnot. So it's not like the swamp where you hear that music, like you're in, you have to be on your toes, but the plains is just different.
Yeah, exactly, because the swamps, there's no real safe place for you to hang about, but in the plains there's big open spaces in a different way. Yeah, that's an interesting one. And it reminds me also about what someone said about the Black Forest music, because initially that music was not made for the Black Forest. That was just a proof of concept for the world of Valheim. But it fit very well in there. And also the intensity of because you mine there so much, and you're constantly under attack, and then you get these moments of respite, but it's just a waiting game until something will attack you. And that music worked really well for that, I think.
It's amazing to me. I mean, I guess it makes sense because you're the composer of the music, but it's amazing to me that, like, when you describe how you think of and define a biome and what you kind of wanted to bring to it, as soon as you say that, like, it exactly makes sense with the music that's there.
Cool.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And it's interesting too to like everything that we've talked about, like what's your favorite music or whatever, like it always comes back to like how we felt about it, you know? It's all like with resonating with the feelings and how the music in each biome and each situation like seems to make sense with the feeling that's happening at the time. Like the music for the mountains. When I listen to that music, it feels like I'm rising up, like I'm, you know, going up somehow in the mountains.
Yeah, that one was an interesting challenge. That the song that's in the mountains is the fifth version of that song. They're different, a fair bit different, but that took time to get absolutely right. And I think it's the type of thing where it's only when you hear it you know that that's going to be the right thing. Same here with the song that you might be hearing now, the sort of homestead song.
Mm-hmm.
That was also, I think that the bass layers of the song were there relatively early on, but the melodies weren't right for what it felt. And because I've done a lot of, I love Swedish folk, I love Scandinavian folk music, and I've worked a fair bit with folk musicians in different ways. My master exam project, one part of that was a short opera for early music musicians, people who play Baroque music and Renaissance music, classical musicians, folk music singers, and folk music musicians. And so I wanted to integrate the way they play their instruments in a more modern setting, a way of coming together between different aesthetics. But with Swedish folk music, the thing that I found really beautiful is the melancholy. And I know that pronouncing it like melancholy is not the correct thing in English, but it's such a different way of relating to what it is in Scandinavia, because we call it melancholy. So we end on an up note. We know it's depressing, but it's something that we all go through, and it's a natural feeling that we all have. And so we can almost be nostalgically melancholy feeling because we know it will pass. It's not like depression. It is just, oh, it's grey today, it's cold, not really fun. We also know that if you get a fire going, or you watch something and you cuddle up in bed or a sofa with a blanket and some cushions, you know it's good. Then you're gonna survive to the next day. And that's sort of what that introspective melancholy is. And I think that Scandinavian folk music really tells that emotion correctly. And that's why I want to say in English, I don't want to call it melancholy, because that sounds really depressing. It's like
it does.
Melancholy. It's like melancholy for me. So
I like your version better.
Thank you. The problem was getting that feeling in the melody. How do you make a melancholy feeling, but that also feels comforting and being at home? That all Scandinavians would know what it is, but also people from other cultures could resonate with that and not feel like, oh God, I'm home again. And that was the difficulty of this song, and that's why that melody took a couple of tries. I think it's fallen into place. It works. And also with meadows, I really wanted that to be a nice place to be. I didn't think that people were necessarily going to spend 600 to 800 hours in the meadows, so it had to work for that. But I think it does for many people, and of course I don't take offense if people do change the music, because there's only so many times you can listen to the same song. But I hope to do more variations in the future, so that there is more musical content in the game to enjoy. But we're not there yet.
But you are still working on upcoming stuff.
Yes, I am. I just finished. There's a new cave, the mountain cave complex, which you can encounter in the mountains. I've just finished the music for that last week, and I have new music coming up for each of the biomes that exist now in the world that also has music. And then we'll probably continue with more stuff for the upcoming biomes.
Cool.
Yeah.
Looking forward to this music.
Me too. That's a classical composer way of relating to it. Whenever you talk to another composer and you say that, oh, where are you going? Oh, I'm going to have this concert in a year because I've done this piece. You say, oh, that's so cool. I'm looking forward to hearing this piece. And then the composer goes, yeah, me too. Like, I don't know how it's going to sound yet. I haven't even started composing yet. But I know that I know that's going to be really fun. One thing I want to say that I'm really thankful for. I go off on a lot of tangents with these things, but I think it's all holistic, encompassing of things. I'm really thankful that this hit came at a later part in my life. I wouldn't have wanted to work on Valheim when I was 22, because being a little bit older gives you that perspective on life, and how to sort of relate to having a hit. Because there's so many parts of our society that talk about what happens when you get a hit. How do you make your next hit just as good or sell as well, or whatever.
Right.
And I think it's nice to be at a stage in life where I don't care for the aspect of the hit. I care about making good music.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like there's no game I've made the music for where that drive has not been the same. I want to make the best music I can for the game to make that experience come alive as well as I can. And that's what I'm going to do with the other biome. I'm just going to continue writing and have fun, and yeah, because I know that not caring about it is probably the best way to go about it.
Yeah, and I think that kind of goes back to staying true to your core, like, you know, Richard staying true to the vision of Valheim, and you staying true to just connecting with the music and focusing on making that the best.
Yeah, I think that's as good as we can do it.
And as you mentioned, having fun with it, that's really the key thing of it. Because when you're having fun with something, then the passion just naturally flows, you know, into it.
Exactly.
Which makes it flow easier. That reminds me of a question that I had from one of the community members, Raquel Towers. She had asked about which of the soundtrack like challenged you the most in coming up with it versus like the one that just flowed easiest and just came right out.
Oh, the sailing song, in a way, because probably the sailing song. I envisioned a very different way of it sounding when you sail. So I think I put out first idea to Richard, and it was not at all what he wanted for the game. Then I think I tried a second one, and he's like, no, we need to find the right way of doing this. Because I think that for me, I played a lot of sailing that would go into nighttime. And sailing at nighttime is a very different thing to daytime. And so I had that the folk music-y, slightly dancey, but melancholy way of relating to how hard it is to sail and oar rowing and all of that. And that was not at all what Richard was going for. So it's more a question of getting the direction that he wanted, and then making something that was very good. And because I also felt that when they started to give me ideas of what the music they wanted to have, or Richard wanted to have, we were looking at a lot, of course, Wind Waker, which is a game that's famous for its sailing. But the problem is that Wind Waker is very almost naively happy at sailing. And that would not work with Valheim, because Valheim is not happy-go-lucky in the way that Zelda game and cel-shaded is. That was just a completely different reality, and it took a while before we found something that worked, and we had to look through old soundtracks and old movies, and I tried to look at music outside of gaming and outside of movies for my inspiration, because I feel that with a lot of video game music, it's people who listen to other video game soundtracks as well. So there's a lot of a feedback loop, and what happens within the video game community feeds more stuff in the video game community. And I think that looking at music outside of that world is a way of bringing something fresh and new in, or at least it's a way of trying to. But when we found the track that showed me as a reference, okay, now I understand sort of what we're getting at, but we need to tweak it. We need to find that Valheim-esque way of expressing this. Like, we had the words, but
that sounds so challenging to try and get an idea of a type of music into another person's mind to then actually create it in the real world. That seems like that would be such a complex process to go through.
It is really complex, and I've had experiences working with game designers who don't have a vocabulary of how to speak about music. Now, that doesn't have to mean that they have the right words. I have a friend I've worked with a lot, and he doesn't have a musically correct vocabulary, but he has a way of talking about what he wants the music to be that is just so good that he might as well have been versed in music literature. So
Wow.
whenever he says what he wants, he's so clear at communicating. I get it very quickly and can do what he wants, and that's fantastic. So that's one way to show that you don't have to be able to be versed in music to talk about music. But there are a lot of people who don't have it, have never gotten to practice how to talk about music and what music is. That's understandable because you don't do it until you interact with a musician or a composer, I would guess.
It's interesting because I've talked with quite a few of the devs and played with them, and I was the most nervous about talking with you today.
Ooh, wow.
And that's why I asked Versaugh and Lawla to come and join this morning.
Yay!
Oh, Christy hands.
They're my support system. And I think it's because I felt very nervous, and it's ridiculous, I understand, in my head. I felt very nervous because I feel like, oh my gosh, there's this amazing composer with this beautiful music that I love, and I am not like specialized in how to talk about this music, you know? Like, I have a little bit of music background, but not enough to count. And I guess, you know, I'm like, well, my questions and conversation is just going to be from the layman's terms, you know, because I can't talk in the musical details like you were talking about that some people do and some people don't.
I think it's incredibly brave of you to say this, and I think it's cool. It's really cool hearing this, and it makes me relate back to why I love music, because music is, I think, one of those arts that so many people can get into, and it doesn't matter for me at which level it is, as long as it brings happiness. Sometimes when I talk to people and it comes apparent that I work as a composer with music, and they say that, oh, I'm not advanced in playing my instrument or this way. I just like I twiddle in my room and play a little bit here and there, and I say that it doesn't matter, because as long as it makes you happy, that is worth everything. It just happens to be that it makes me happy working with this and doing these bigger projects and things. But that happiness is exactly the same as it should be for anyone else. I think that's why there's so many meeting points with musicians. I went on not a camp, but with a project course where we got to play together with musicians in the Gambia, the river, I think. And with people, we didn't have necessarily a language in common, or we could sit down with two instruments and play for hours and have fun and communicate, even though we didn't say any words. And that's what I feel is the power of music. That it's a language that you don't need to even speak the same language, but you can communicate.
Yes.
Which I think is so cool. And also it's really interesting because you say this. I think the nervousness that you felt talking to me can be also transitioned over to thinking about how game designers who are put in a position where they're supposed to be choosing how the game works and everything, and then suddenly they're going to make choices about the music, which might not be something they thought about before or something that they've even practiced.
Yeah.
But I feel like there's this funny thing that's happened with this company and happened with one company before, is that we are lucky that Grimcore, for example, is a musician in capacity as well, and he's really good at understanding what Richard wants. And those times where like me and Richard don't have the time to really suss out what we need, what he needs, and how I do it, then Grimcore can come in, have a chat with him, and understand what that is, and then put that in some form of musical terms for me. And that's been a really good help as well. I did that on same thing happened on Mortal Online when I made the music for that. So that is also a boon, that we can have this diplomatic translator, just because it's they're there and they can talk to the people in this way. That's worked out really well as well.
And that is cool that, you know, Grim is like the Richard translator, and but that also, I mean, that's impressive too. Then, like we were talking about the challenge of getting a vision from one person's brain to another, and now you're like going through another, and it's like, but in a way, I guess that kind of adds to more synergy and more people adding to the process rather than just translating it through everybody.
Exactly, because I mean, the stuff that he would notice because he spent more time with Richard would be that, Richard actually likes this type of drum beat that's underneath. We talked about all the other things, but what he actually wants is that drum beat underneath. And he mentioned that in a side comment when they had a conversation somewhere else about something else that Richard might not have thought about before and didn't communicate with me. But when he said the Grimcore related to me, like, cool, that's now we know.
Right.
So it's a synergy, and I think that as a composer, my idea of becoming a composer would be that I would be in control of the final product. It would be all me and all about me. I was young at that point. And I've come to the conclusion that your music is never as good as when it happens in collaboration. You can absolutely compose your piece, but it's when other people that you trust come in and either listen and talk about the music, or musicians that are going to play the music have ideas and bring their personality to the piece. That's when it becomes better than it ever could have been before. And I think that's one of the things that I feel in the music world is a good experience, but I've never really heard it talked about in the world of business or any other world, is that when you write for a piece of music, you write for the person who's going to play it and not necessarily for the instrument, and then it just becomes so much better. And I think that's about trusting that other person is going to bring something special to this project that you can't, because you can't be everyone and everything. Neither would I want to be. So collaboration, I love it.
Yeah. And it's true. It does become a different kind of creativity when people come together. I mean, like we were talking about before, even in the game, moving from single player to multiplayer, right? And now we have all of these people that have done different parts of the game, and we come together, and now this village is being built, and it's, you know, being developed based on the collaboration between us, which makes a different type of build, makes a different type of music, but it's richer for it.
Exactly. That's the beauty of being human, I think, as well. I must say, this is incredibly interesting, just sitting here in front of a fireplace and talking. It's very nice.
Good. I'm glad you were able to come into game with us.
Oh, yeah.
And get to hear your voice.
Is there anything... Thank you so much, and thank you so much for having me. Absolute pleasure to be invited. Is there anything musically you would like in the continued development of the game?
You know, one thing I thought of, which Grubner wrote a comment about this, about vocals being added in the game later, and I mean, like, there are some vocals in the game now. There's a little bit, like the motor fight has some vocals, right?
Yeah.
But like, I think that creates a unique effect, and I would wonder if maybe there would be a way, or are you interested in? I don't know. I would say is it a possibility, but Jonathan's got me trained not to say that. That, like, how would you envision voices being added into the music?
It's a thing you always think about in video game music and sound design, because our brains are so, what do you call it, focused that on, if we hear human voices talking or singing, we subconsciously listen to that more than anything else. So for background music, it's not really good, because you get, it steals the focus away from being background music, and also you grow tired of it more quickly. So that's a thing that wouldn't work necessarily for maybe biome music, but for something that plays shorter while. like the mother or Muldor, which just means mother in Swedish, boss fights works really well because there you can have it. But then there's also levels of that. The Muldor boss fight doesn't have words as much; it's more oral singing,
Right.
and that works a lot better than not stealing your focus away from something than would you have something with lyrics. So it is something I've been thinking about. I have an idea I would love to do, which is a choral-based piece idea. But we don't know if that's gonna happen or not. I haven't told Richard. It will be a hidden thing in the world. A little tribute to my mum, who sadly passed away before COVID, and she was a huge part of my life, and I wanted to do something for her. And I wrote a requiem around that time. I was composing it anyway, but then she passed away from cancer very suddenly, and I wrote half of that requiem for her. And this is something that's going to come out soon when I've finished the mixing and mastering of it. And the woman who sings there, she's a soprano called Negar Zarasi, Iranian descent, living in Sweden. She's an opera singer who's a bundle of joy to work with, fantastic singer. And she's done 2 of my big projects. And she would be, if I could get a singer in, that would be her. So I'm hoping to do something with her in Valheim, but I don't know yet. Because you want to save it for something that really means something.
Right.
Because then it's going to be awesome.
Yeah.
So the thing is, I have a whole roadmap that I've proposed to Richard of what I want to do with music. And we'll see if they accept it. That's always the thing.
Yeah.
But no, in the right place, I think maybe for home music, something vocal would be really nice.
Yeah. Yeah, and I would imagine it would be more like you said, the like background choral or humming or something like that, something along those lines.
Exactly. I will probably record my friends who sing in choirs for something like that. Because there is just something useful about the human voice, and especially in choral singing. I think that when the beauty of being human really comes out, because it's the instrument that's closest to all of us. We all have it.
Right.
But it's one of the most beautiful things. So I have thought about it, but in video games you have to be watchful for not stealing away the focus from where you want it to be. But in the right spot, magic.
Yeah, that totally makes sense.
But I'd love to do more. It's always a thing with you have to get choirs and the big units and fun and stuff. And in COVID times, we haven't even been able to sing together.
Right.
But things are changing.
For sure. Lawla, Versaugh, what do you guys think? Is there anything in the music that you would like to see or feel in the future too?
Well,
I can't think of anything, to be honest. I gotta say, when I first started playing the game, and I mean I've played multitudes of games. I think in the first 15-20 minutes of booting up the game, the music was something that really I really took notice of and thought like, wow, this music is so beautiful, and just I don't think I've ever really thinking about it. I don't think there's ever really been a game, or at least not in the last 2 or 3 years that I've played, where I've sort of taken notice of the music and sort of thought, wow, they've really, really put a lot of effort into this, and not just sort of, recorded something and just put it up there. The amount of effort that went into all of the composition really, really shows.
Oh man, I think as a composer, there's no higher praise than that. I think, because I feel with movies and video games, it's the same thing. If the music does a good job, then you don't really hear it. But then I think that there is that 10% of the time where a production really stands out, and you hear the music immediately, and it elevates everything, and that's what you hope for. That's what you hope for to achieve with the right product, because there's so many products and games we work on where that's not the aim of the game. The game is not even going to try to achieve that, or doesn't want to.
Yeah.
But with Valheim, I feel like it all really came together, and that sets the stage for that music can be exceptional together with what this is.
Definitely. And I think that it's interesting too because you know, you say most people don't make that effort or think about it, but like I had the exact same feeling when I started with the music, and I'm like, oh, I noticed it. You know, I noticed it in each biome. I noticed, and like I gotta say too, that little music that you made, like for when you find a new biome for the first time, and it makes that "Here You Are" music, makes me jump every single time, even when I know it's coming.
Yeah.
I mean, but it's not like a scary thing, but it just like has a strong impact in the way that it comes.
Yeah, because it
Out.
has vocals in it.
Does it? It
Yeah.
does! That didn't even occur to me.
It's so short that you don't think about it. But I wanted to use that because it has that sense of awe and wonder. It's that almost
Yes.
magical feeling of something new. And that the human voice is good for that.
I love the way that you describe every type of feeling and thought of what you want it to be like behind the music. Like I want you to just like go down the list and say, you know, I mean that would it would be a long list, you know, but it's so interesting to hear your perspective of where you were coming from that led to that music.
Yeah. It's
So,
it's funny because you don't always get to talk about those thoughts and ideas that do come into the music because it's not it comes from somewhere, and I think it should. I think when it's well thought out and grounded in the world that it exists with, then it becomes something. Because it's easy to have a lot of ideas where things come from, but they don't always necessarily become grounded in the world. But you're right. It's a lot of thought has gone into this, and I'm really happy it did.
we'll pick up there next time.
Happy gaming.
Happy gaming!